I was standing in a freezing warehouse with a birthday cake in my hands when I saw my husband kissing our neighbor in the dark. 1 second, I thought I was surprising him for his 48th birthday. The next, I was watching the life I'd built for 20 years collapse through a narrow glass window. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply walked to the side of the building, flipped the main power switch, and locked them both inside. 10 minutes later, I was standing beside the other woman's husband as he shined a flashlight onto the scene, my husband in her clothes, rumpled, scrambling in the dark. That was the moment something inside me changed forever. I didn't know it then, but that night would lead to cameras hidden in my home police reports, a courtroom showdown, and ultimately, the woman I was always meant to become. My name is Avery Collins. I'm 46 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed I had built a marriage that could survive anything. We lived in a quiet suburb just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, the kind of place where every cul-de-sac has kids on bicycles, every porch has hanging ferns, and every neighbor waves like they've known you forever. I thought I was safe here. I thought my life was predictable, steady, ordinary in all the good ways. But everything began to crack on the night I tried to surprise my husband. It was Derek's birthday, his 48th, and I had spent the entire day preparing something special. I baked his favorite German chocolate cake from scratch, even toasted the pecans the way his mother used to. I wrapped a watch I'd saved months to buy, and I decorated our kitchen with simple lights. Logan, our 11-year-old son, helped me hang. Derek loved low-key celebrations. Nothing fancy, he'd always say, just us. So when he called at 6:20 p.m., saying he had to stay late for a last-minute inventory check at the old storage facility, Old Pine Storage, the dusty warehouse his company rented, I didn't think anything was wrong. I was disappointed, sure. But Derek had always been responsible, dedicated. I told him it was okay that we would wait. But he said, "No, honey, don't wait. Just keep the cake in the fridge. I'll eat later." Something in his tone unsettled me. Something tight. Rushed. Like he wasn't telling the whole truth. But I brushed it away. 20 years of marriage teaches you to ignore small cracks if you're afraid of what's underneath. Around 7:45, I decided I didn't want the evening to go to waste. I packed the cake, the gift bag, a small set of candles, and drove to Old Pine Storage. I told myself I just wanted to surprise him, bring a little warmth into a cold warehouse. But the moment I turned into the gravel driveway, my stomach twisted. The building was dark, too dark. Even when Derek worked late, he always left the security lights on. Tonight, only one weak bulb flickered above the metal door, casting a strange, sickly glow across the lot. I parked, grabbed the cake, and walked toward the entrance. My breath puffed in the chilly evening air. There was a faint hum inside, like movement, like whispered voices. I froze with my hand on the handle. I don't know why I looked through that narrow window. Maybe instinct. Maybe God. Maybe the kind of intuition women earn through years of putting others first. But I leaned forward and pressed my face to the glass. What I saw made my heart stop. Derek, my husband, was standing in the middle of the room with Tessa Harding, our neighbor, from 2 houses down. Tessa with the glossy blonde hair, the Pilates body, the laugh that always felt a little too flirty for someone who claimed she barely noticed men. She was wrapped around him, his hands on her waist, her mouth at his neck. They weren't just clothes, they were familiar, practiced, comfortable. The cake slipped in my hands. I felt the weight of it, but not the reality. It was as if someone else were standing there, someone wearing my skin while I floated just above. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. Something colder than grief took over something steady, sharp, and terrifyingly calm. I stepped back, every sound suddenly too loud, my heartbeat, the rustle of my coat, the whisper of gravel under my shoes. I looked around. The parking lot was empty. No one was watching. And without planning it, without thinking it through, I walked to the electrical panel mounted on the side of the building. I flipped the main switch. Inside the warehouse went instantly black. I heard Derek shout. Tessa's shrill scream followed. Confusion, panic. Still calm, unnervingly. Calm, I walked to the metal doors, slid the heavy external lock across the frame, and snapped it shut with the industrial padlock hanging beside it. Then I pulled out my phone and called Evan Harding, Tessa's husband. "Yes?" he answered, distracted. "Evan, I'm so sorry to bother you," I said, letting my voice tremble, not with fear, but with something close to a performance. "I think something's wrong at the storage unit. Derek said he'd meet someone here tonight, but I heard a crash. I'm scared to go inside. Can you come on my way?" he said immediately. 10 minutes later, Evan arrived, still in his work clothes, tie-loosened eyes, anxious. Together, we walked to the door. I pretended to struggle with the lock. Evan grabbed it, pulled hard, and the door burst open. He shined his flashlight inside. And there they were. Derek and Tessa standing too close in the half-dark, their clothes rumpled in ways that explained more than any words ever could. Evan froze. Derek stuttered something that sounded like misunderstanding power outage, wrong timing, but the story crumbled even as he spoke it. I stepped forward softly, holding the cake and the gift bag like a ghost of the evening I'd tried to give him. "What? What is going on?" I whispered. No one answered, no one could. And in that moment, something inside me shifted forever. Not broken, not destroyed, rearranged. Quietly rearranged into a woman who would no longer accept lies, disrespect, or betrayal as part of her life. I looked at Tessa, at Derek, at Evan's shaking hands. And for the first time, I understood that this night wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something entirely new. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you, if you were standing there with me that night, seeing your spouse like that, what's the first word you would type to describe how you'd feel? Just one word. You might think I drove home, locked myself in the bathroom, and cried until my ribs hurt. That's what the old me would have done, the Avery who believed marriage meant endurance, not boundaries. The Avery who forgave too quickly, who apologized even when she didn't know what she'd done wrong. But the woman standing in that freezing warehouse parking lot, she wasn't that Avery anymore. Evan didn't yell. He didn't break things. He just stared at his wife like she was a stranger wearing Tessa's skin. I could see the exact moment something inside him collapsed. His face emptied out like someone had reached in and turned off a light. Derek, meanwhile, stammered out excuse after excuse. "Avery, listen." "Babe, this isn't what you think. It's not what it looks like. We were just talking. I tripped Avery, please." Every sentence was worse than the one before. I didn't argue, didn't accuse, didn't raise my voice. Silence is powerful when people expect you to fall apart. I simply said, "Derek, move your hand off her waist." He jerked back as if my voice burned. For a moment, I thought he'd follow me outside. Apologize, beg, something. But Tessa reached for him instinctively, and he let her. That told me everything. The drive home felt unreal. The streetlights blurred. My hands were ice on the steering wheel. Logan was asleep in his room when I arrived, completely unaware that his world had just shifted. I stood in his doorway for a long time, watching him breathe, asking myself the same question 20 million women have asked in the dark. How did I not see this coming? But that night, clarity arrived like a blade. It wasn't that I didn't see. It was that I kept trusting the version of Derek I wished he was. And now I was done wishing. The next morning, Derek behaved exactly like men who get caught always do. He overcompensated. Breakfast made, coffee prepared, voice soft, eyes watery. He kissed the top of my head like the night before hadn't happened. "Avery, I swear on my life, nothing serious is going on." She was going through something. I was comforting her. In the dark, with his hands under her blouse. I nodded like I understood, but inside, something in me was already plotting, building, reshaping, rearranging. By lunchtime, I had taken the day off from my studio. Instead, I drove straight to a quiet cafe across town, one where no neighbor from Maple Bend would randomly show up in yoga pants and a pumpkin spice latte. I called Evan and told him to meet me there. He arrived looking like he hadn't slept, eyes swollen, jaw clenched, wedding ring still on, but twisted sideways. He sat down hard across from me, exhaling like he'd been holding his breath since last night. I need to know everything he said. So I told him, not the emotions, not yet. Emotions cloud your vision when you need clarity. I told him the facts, what I saw through the glass, how they held each other, the way Derek touched her hair like he'd memorized the texture. Evan pressed his fist to his mouth. For a moment, I thought he might break down. But instead, he did something unexpected. He laughed. A sharp, stunned, disbelieving laugh. You know what Tessa told me last week, he said. She said she was mentoring someone in the neighborhood. I thought she meant one of the teenage girls from Ridgeview Elementary. She meant your husband. Mentoring. Of course. We sat in silence, both of us absorbing the size of the lie. Then Evan leaned forward. Avery, whatever you decide to do, I'm with you. You didn't deserve this. Neither did Logan. That was the moment something clicked. Not romantically, not emotionally, strategically. For the first time in 20 years, I had an ally. That afternoon marked the true beginning of my plan. Not revenge, not exactly. Clarity, direction, a road out of the darkness. The Avery who stood on that path wasn't desperate to save her marriage. She was preparing to protect her future. First, I bought a small, inexpensive mini camera, no bigger than my thumb. I placed it in the living room near the bookshelf, angled as if it were just a decorative sensor. If Derek stayed loyal, it would capture nothing. If he didn't, well, he was about to reveal his real self. Then, I reset my phone, wiped my fingerprints off Derek's laptop, and quietly printed out every financial statement from our joint account. The numbers didn't lie. Derek had been withdrawing money for months. Just enough that I didn't notice. Just enough that he could say it was gas or work lunches. Just enough to fund something or someone. The last withdrawal was 2 weeks ago. $1,250. A hotel charge followed, not even subtle. I stared at the printout until the ink seemed to pulse on the page. My chest tightened, but this time it wasn't heartbreak, it was resolve. When Derek came home that night, he tried to kiss me again. I let him, because sometimes letting someone think they're winning is the fastest way to actually win. Are we okay? He whispered. We will be, I said. He smiled, relieved. He had no idea what those 4 words really meant. Later that night, long after he fell asleep, I stood alone in the hallway. The house felt different, colder, more hollow, like a place waiting for truth to echo through it. I looked at the mini camera's blinking red light, and I whispered to myself, almost like a vow, whatever comes next. I won't pretend anymore. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you if you think Derek deserves whatever is coming for him, type 10. The night everything finally snapped didn't look dramatic at first. No lightning, no storm. Just a quiet Tuesday, the kind that usually disappears into memory without leaving a trace. Derek came home late, smelling like whiskey and cheap cologne, a combination I had learned to recognize the past few weeks. He dropped his keys on the counter, grumbled about a tough day, and opened the fridge like the house belonged only to him. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The mini camera on the shelf blinked its tiny red light, witnessing everything. Why didn't you make dinner? Derek snapped, slamming the fridge door harder than necessary. I was working. Logan already ate. Working, he scoffed. You sit in that little studio all day, pretending you run a business. Those words weren't new, but something about the way he spat them like venom made the air shift. He poured himself another drink, swallowed it in one gulp, and turned toward me with a look I'd never seen before. A look that didn't recognize me. A look that didn't care. You've been distant, he said, cold. Maybe if you paid attention to your husband once in a while, none of this would have happened. There it was, the classic twist. The betrayal becomes your fault. I stayed still, hands folded, voice soft but steady. Derek, please lower your voice. Logan is asleep. That did it. He lunged forward, grabbed my arms, and shook me so hard my teeth clicked. His breath was hot with alcohol. His eyes wild with something deeper than anger, panic maybe. Losing control. Don't tell me what to do in my house, he roared. My shoulder hit the wall. Pain shot down my spine. For a second, the world blurred. Then everything became crystal clear. The camera had captured it all. I forced myself to speak calmly, even as my pulse hammered in my throat. "Let go of me, Derek." Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the realization that I wasn't afraid of him anymore. But the moment he stepped back, he followed my eyes, directly to the blinking red light. His face drained of color. "What? What is that?" he whispered. "Proof, I said. And it's already backed up." He stumbled backward, breath shaking. I think in that moment, he finally saw the truth. I wasn't the woman he could bully into silence anymore. I left the house that night with Logan and drove straight to Evan's place. He opened the door without a single question, took one look at my face and said, "It's time." And it was. The next morning, I met with my attorney at Carter & Bloom Legal Group, handed over the footage, the bank statements, the hotel charges, the screenshots, the recordings. Everything. She didn't blink. She didn't hesitate. She just said, "Avery, you're going to win this." And for the first time in months, maybe years, I believed her. The legal process was a storm. Derek tried everything, crying voicemails, angry texts, threats about taking Logan, accusations that I was destroying our family. Margaret, my mother-in-law, made scenes at the school, tried convincing teachers I was mentally unstable. Tessa attempted to spin the story so she would look like the victim manipulated by Derek. None of it mattered. The evidence was stronger than their lies. When the final court date arrived, I walked into that courtroom with my head high, wearing the navy blue dress I always saved for days when I needed courage. Evan sat behind me, for support, hands clasped, expression firm. Derek avoided my eyes. Margaret glared. Tessa wiped fake tears with a tissue she didn't need. The judge watched the video. The room went dead silent. No excuses, no misunderstandings, no more pretending. The ruling came down like a stone dropped into still water. Full custody of Logan granted to me. Derek required to pay monthly child support. I retained the majority of our marital assets. Derek's assault charges were forwarded to the district attorney. Tessa's involvement in the financial deception led to a civil penalty she would share with Derek. Margaret received a no-contact order, protecting me and Logan. When the gavel hit, something inside me broke, but in the best way. Not with pain. With release. Months passed. Logan and I moved into a small but sunlit townhouse in South Charlotte. My studio lilac and linen started growing, really growing. Orders came in faster than I could fill them. For the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was living. I didn't plan on letting anyone into my heart again, not after the wreckage Derek left behind. But sometimes, life has its own ideas. Evan became part of our days, naturally picking Logan up from school, when I had meetings, sharing dinners, when both our schedules ran long, fixing small things around the house without being asked. He didn't rush. He didn't push. He didn't expect anything from me. He just showed up. Kindly, consistently, quietly. And one evening, while Logan and Evan's son were running through sprinklers in the backyard, he looked at me with a softness I hadn't felt in years. "You deserve better than what you lived through," he said. "And if you ever decide you want something more, I'd be honored to be that for you." I didn't answer right away. Healing takes time. But I knew deep down that my story wasn't ending in pain. It was beginning in possibility. Because I didn't lose a marriage. I found myself. And in the end, that was worth everything. Before we move on, let me ask you, how did this story make you feel? If you want more stories like this, comment 100. Tell me which country you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video so more people can hear stories that touch the heart.